we've got the maker of Canyonlands, which is a very unique, very early collection on Asteroid Protocol. So if you're brand new to Asteroid Protocol, why not subscribe to the channel? Of course, you'll find more guides, updates, and of course, other content related to the creators that use the platform, right? So for those of you who don't know, Asteroid Protocol is a place where you can inscribe anything on the Cosmos Hub. You can also deploy your own tokens known as CFT20 tokens, okay? And you can, of course, inscribe pretty much any kind of data onto the blockchain, and it will exist there permanently, or essentially as long as the Cosmos Hub is in existence, right? So again, if it's your first time, why not follow us over here on X, and of course, give us a subscription over on YouTube. So why don't we introduce our guest for today, the creator of Canyonlands. How's it going?
Hey man, how you doing? You okay?
Everything's going well. Yeah, let's kick it off. I mean, for those of us who have been super early to the protocol, we are definitely familiar with your work. And I've got some burning questions because I personally have been a huge fan of this work and a huge supporter from the beginning. So from the very top, let's just talk about who created Canyonlands and let us know of any type of collaborations that you've got going on.
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose Canyonlands was a sort of name for the music project that I sort of kicked off way back in sort of 2020 or 2021. So I've been doing music for sort of quite some time. And, you know, sort of going through the pandemic, I really sort of got back into sort of music in a big way. And, you know, had this sort of name for sort of quite some time. So I started sort of putting stuff on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, things like that. So initially it was just a music project, but I'd always loved doing sort of little films and, you know, sort of little videos for the music that I sort of do. You know, I sort of got a YouTube channel and was doing a few things sort of way back in sort of 2011, 2012, with the sort of limited sort of tools, you know, that we had sort of around then. And I suppose it was always in my sort of mind, you know, to do sort of something visual with the music. Really sort of wanted that to be a sort of strong element. Because I think even more than sort of music, I'm much more inspired by sort of film, you know, sort of photography. You know, and that's probably my biggest inspiration for sort of music, actually.
Right.
So yeah, I really wanted to connect those two things. And I've been thinking about, you know, how do I sort of promote the music? You know, you go through things like Bandcamp or SoundCloud, and you kind of fall into a bit of a black hole. You know, it's really difficult. You're trying to go through sort of, you know, people who sort of, you know, gateholders, I suppose you'd sort of call them, or gatekeepers, sorry. And it's really sort of tricky to promote. And I didn't want to be sort of spending sort of loads of money on sort of, you know, people who sort of, you know, promising you that they're going to sort of advertise or get you sort of music out there and you never hear from them again. And I had it in my mind that NFTs were, you know, where everything is probably going to be going for sort of media. So I'd been looking at a few protocols and, you know, sort of trying to get my head around them. And, you know, I suppose it sort of also intersected with my love of sort of crypto as well. So, you know, really interested in NFTs, you know, back in 2021, 22, and explored a few platforms. I'd explored, you know, sort of like OpenSea on Ethereum. Wasn't really sort of connecting with that at all. Stargaze, I had a look at sort of Stargaze back in sort of 2022, 23, but quite a high sort of barrier to entry. You know, I think you still needed to do a bit of coding, or, you know, and the terminology, it wasn't very sort of friendly, and the UX wasn't friendly at all. I found it really tricky. And, you know, being a sort of creator yourself, you just want the sort of tools to be really easy, so you can just get on and put your stuff out there. If something's frustrating you, it just you know, you just want to sort of turn off from it. And that was my sort of experience up until sort of 2023, late 2023, with sort of NFTs and sort of the protocols that were about. So it was still on my mind though, you know, sort of very much watching a lot of the sort of media on sort of NFTs and how people were using it to promote music, how people were sort of using it, you know, to not just sort of promote, but obviously sell things directly to people. And it was just like, well, if only there was sort of something out there that was really, really easy to use. And sort of obviously being sort of big into Cosmos, you know, it's around Christmas time. So I think Asteroid dropped. Was it Christmas or was it January? I can't remember now.
That would have been January. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was January. And so it sort of dropped, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. This looks kind of cool. And I had a little play around with it. And it was just so easy to use. You know, I've got no real sort of technical background in terms of sort of, programming or anything like that. And it was just, it was a pleasure. You know, I created a sort of CFT20, you know, just as an experiment to mess about, you know, and what could I sort of do? And it sort of sparked some imagination, you know, on what I could sort of potentially do with it. But then, you know, obviously, you know, uploading some of the images that I'd sort of been experimenting with, you know, over the course of the last sort of 18 months, you know, just messing about, sort of, you know, creating sort of images to go with sort of the music that I'd been doing. And sort of uploading that was just so simple. It was incredible. It was like, right, okay, this is something I can really get my teeth into. This is something that works. It's easy. And at that point, right at the start of January, I didn't really know where the protocol was going to be going. I think they were sort of mooting that there was going to be a marketplace, but there was nothing definite at that sort of point. But once that marketplace sort of, you know, was instantiated, that was it. It was like, right, this is how you do it. You know, this is how I'm going to sort of really marry up the sort of images that I've had in my sort of head with this sort of music and really sort of try and promote, you know, sort of what I'm doing as an artist to sort of other people. And it was a really cool experiment. So, you know, going back to sort of collaborations, you know, because it was such a, you know, I don't want to sort of oversell the point, but it was like a really good experience. You know, one of the rare good experiences that I've had using a crypto sort of app. Because, you know, it's like you use sort of MetaMask and, you know, some of the protocols and you just end up in frustration, you know, just like, oh my God, what am I doing? And why am I getting rug pulled by the fees and everything? Yeah. Oh, just, you know, pulling your hair out. And I've had that so many times over the course of, like, you know, my crypto sort of history, 2021, 22. And there was none of that. There was none of that frustration. The fees were cheap. You know, it was really simple to sort of use, going through sort of Kepler Wallet. And I was just like, this is so easy. Anyway, so going back to sort of collaborations, so you might know a sort of creator who's sort of on Asteroid as well. So she goes by H36 or Hidden 36.
Yes,
so
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so we sort of met on Twitter actually. I'd been sort of, you know, putting some music out on a sort of another Twitter account that I sort of had that was, you know, more focused on sort of music and less sort of crypto orientated. And we sort of just got chatting, and I clicked on a link that she had on a, you know, sort of that took me to her Bandcamp, and I listened to some of her tracks, and I was genuinely blown away. That there was one track Thursday that was just like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know. And if you know H36, you've heard any of her stuff, her voice is incredible. It's quite ethereal, very, very good, and her music is, you know, sort of very. I don't know if you know Warp Records. It's sort of mixed between, I would suppose, you know, a bit more of a chilled out sort of Aphex Twin, mixed with mixed with Boards of Canada, I would say. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. So we kind of, you know, this was 2020, start of 2023. We started sort of collaborating. You know, we sort of got a track that I'd laid down the sort of, you know, all the sort of music for, and she sort of wrote the lyrics and vocals, and we just hit it off. And, you know, we got like about 5 or 6 tracks together. So over this sort of period of time, I'd been saying, you know, I don't know, you know, if we want to promote this stuff, I'm pretty sure NFTs are the way to go. And like H36 had no, sort of knowledge of crypto, or to my sort of understanding anyway, no knowledge of it. Should correct me or get angry at me if I've got that wrong. But yeah, I don't think she had any sort of knowledge really of the crypto sort of world and sort of NFTs. Probably a little bit skeptical, but I sort of, got her over to start using Asteroid. And so you got to remember, like H36 had not used any of this stuff before, it's a real sort of crypto newbie.
Wow.
And she took to it like, sort of a duck to sort of water, and for somebody who'd never used crypto before to sort of come onto that sort of platform and be able to sort of do that, I thought that was amazing. So that sort of shows like how sort of good I think Asteroid got the UX right, because I think if that was Stargaze, and it's not to denigrate Stargaze at all, but I think that there's a sort of slightly higher barrier to sort of entry to be able to use that, and I don't think it's as sort of creator friendly, especially for creators that don't necessarily come from a sort of crypto native background. So yeah, she started to then do her own collections, and if you get to know sort of H36, she's an amazing artist. She's a photographer, and she sort of does, jewelry and things like that. And so for her, it really just sparked her imagination, and she's done like just loads of collections and sort of really good ones. But yeah, so we're both very interested in the sort of music and the video side of it, and that's the sort of collaboration, the sort of main collaboration that I've sort of got at the moment, and that's kind of I suppose, a sort of summary of my journey into sort of Asteroid, I suppose. But I just want to give a shout out to the devs because they've done such a good job. Just amazing, really amazing.
Oh, truly, yeah. I agree. I said this early as well, to the devs, and this is for a lot of different platforms. I mean, all we can do really is thank them and use the platforms. They do a lot. They've done a lot. So a lot of respect to these guys and girls out here building stuff for us creators to enjoy, and for us to actually be able to go ahead and share our creations with other people. I mean, what more could you really ask for, So Asteroid Protocol is totally code free. So you mentioned a lot when it comes to NFTs, and you mentioned Stargaze, and of course it's not about Stargaze, it's just about any and pretty much every other NFT marketplace, and launchpad service. You have to know maybe some coding. There's a lot more in-depth knowledge you may need, but with inscriptions, it's pretty much, all the work is done for you. So I'm super big on inscriptions. I can't even hide it. Let's continue on. And by the way, thanks for diving in, because you definitely touched on a lot of subjects that I wanted to ask. But your introduction is simple. Your introduction was comprehensive, but yet it was still simple. And I feel like a lot of people will resonate with this experience and probably have an identical experience compared to what you had using Asteroid Protocol for the first time, because it is just so simple to use. So I'm curious to know, actually, why don't we continue on? And I want to know if you can let me know what you find unique about the experience of inscribing art and tokens and deploying tokens on Cosmos Hub, and of course using Asteroid Protocol. Now, I know you've already mentioned a lot, but I just want to see if there's anything else in there that you could sneak out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I suppose the thing that sort of captured my attention, first of all, is like, you look at Astra and it looks cool. The design of it looks cool. I think that's something they really nailed well. Whoever does the artwork for them, I'm a little bit jealous of the bastard. Sorry, I swore. But I'm a little bit jealous of them because, the whole look of it is sort of great, and I that captured my attention. It looks like somebody who's got a really sort of aesthetic, sort of eye and sort of wants to connect with sort of, creators. And I look at sort of other protocols and they just don't have that. So that captured my sort of attention. But in terms of what I get out of inscribing, I think there's something really direct about your sort of relationship with, sort of the people that are buying your artwork and other creators. So there's something it feels like a very sort of one-to-one, sort of relationship that you sort of have with kind of people, because you can see who sort of bought your stuff, and you can connect with them on their sort of social media, and you sort of build up a relationship with these people, and it's nice to support sort of other artists as well, and so there's this little community that sort of grows, which is something I really, really like. That is really appealing to me. And the other thing, I suppose, is this constant innovation. It's like, wow, it's like Asteroid is constantly evolving, and that's really exciting. As a creator, that is really, really exciting. So, one week it's, you can, the interface sort of looks fairly familiar, you've gotten used to it, and then all of a sudden they've introduced these new features, and you're sort of experimenting with them and using them, and that's really, really cool. And as they're sort of rolling these features out, you're starting to, it really fires the imagination, of what it could be, what you could sort of do with it. And for me, it's a really sort of exciting sort of process. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's weird because I've not used something like this. Like, I've used Bandcamp, but I don't love Bandcamp. I go on it, I put my stuff on there, and it's like, but I don't have a relationship with that platform. There's nothing there. Whereas almost like there's kind of like an emotional, sort of pull. It's like, what do I do? The first thing when I wake up in the morning, I'll check Asteroid Protocol. It's one of the things I do now.
Right.
I'll check to see who's inscribed. I'll check to see what's on there. Have I sold anything? And it's exciting. I don't do that with like SoundCloud or Bandcamp. It doesn't foster that sense of a sort of relationship, which is an odd thing. It's an odd thing to feel something for a platform.
Well, look, I'm right with you 100%. The platform definitely is geared towards collectors and creators. And I want to ask you, I know you touched on it pretty, you touched on it enough, but I'm super curious to actually know, maybe more specifically, when you first got active in collecting and then eventually creating on-chain art.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose go back to sort of 2021, and that's when I got into sort of crypto. It's obviously pandemic. We're all bored out of our minds, and lots of other sort of emotions going on. So I started getting into sort of crypto. Was stupid enough to buy XRP, and then pretty soon I thought, right, okay, I need to look at this sort of properly and sort of really get my head around it. And then I sort of stumbled into sort of Cosmos after, sort of watching a few sort of videos on their sort of central sort of thesis about the interchain, sort of, the interchain sort of thesis. And it just made so much sense to me. It was like, right, okay, horizontal sort of scaling is what happens in sort of nature. It's not sort of vertically sort of scaling. You don't sort of vertically sort of scale in nature if you want to, sort of make something sustainable. And it just made sort of sense. So it's like, okay, so sticking with sort of Cosmos. And as I said, I started to have a look on sort of platforms like, or protocols like Stargaze Zone. Territory is another NFT, but they're NFTs. And I think that distinction that you made earlier, between inscriptions and NFTs is important, because I didn't know the difference between NFTs and inscriptions before sort of Asteroid come along, really. Wasn't really big into sort of Bitcoin, so the ordinals thing sort of passed me by. So yeah, going back to sort of 22, 23, was looking at sort of Stargaze, looking at sort of these other sort of platforms and thinking, yeah, there's some cool art. I quite like that. That's cool. But what really sort of changed, because as I said, there's a high barrier to entry. It's like, how do I get my music on here? Right, I've got to do some coding. I have no idea. And even the terminology that people were using was really confusing. Like you can let's mint this out. I don't hear these terms like, have you minted out sort of these NFTs? But then, I was thinking, well, when you create something, isn't that sort of minting? And nobody was explaining these sort of terms, and I was getting really confused. So it's a bit of a sort of, minefield. And I was thinking, it's just too much at the moment. This stuff really needs to be simplified before it really takes off, because at the moment it's just, I can't get my head around it. So I kind of backed off, and then AI really started taking off, stable diffusion. And I sort of got into that because I've been doing photography, living in London, sort of going around. I like taking sort of photos of brutalist buildings, and there's plenty of them in sort of London. You get some crappy sort of high rises, but I find those sort of stark brutalist sort of landscapes sort of quite interesting. So I'd had sort of collection of photos, and I was thinking about sort of uploading them as well to NFT platforms. But then Stable Diffusion sort of kicked off, and I sort of messed around with some of that because I wanted some artwork for my sort of music. And then I really it sort of started to crystallize in my mind. Actually, some of this stuff is really interesting. Some of what you can do on these sort of AI programs are actually really, really interesting. And these could be sort of standalone things in their own right. The standalone sort of pieces in their own right. I wouldn't need to necessarily, marry them up to sort of music. The music I'm sort of doing, I could probably sort of, find a way to put them on a sort of protocol and sort of sell them. So yeah, I mean, it was really the sort of advent of the AI generated sort of things like Stable Diffusion, and then sort of later sort of Leonardo AI. And then, sort of mix that then with a really, really easy platform to use or protocol to use like Asteroid. And once those two things sort of married, that was it. It was like, right, I can experiment to my heart's content now and really sort of mess around. And this is like a sandbox, and that was it. It just took off from there.
Nice. Yeah. So it looks like, to me, it looks like one of the major things would be the idea that we've got this inscription software platform protocol that is essentially code free and pretty much making more permanent assets on chain than NFTs, but also even simplifying it further. So I don't know. It sounds like a lot of wins, all kind of bundled together for the users. Super easy to use. I was blown away with inscriptions, to be honest, on the Bitcoin side. So seeing them come to the Cosmos ecosystem, which was perfectly in line with what I was seeing on Bitcoin, like I said, and I just felt like there was so much potential here. I had to dive in head first. And so I want to get to actually a couple of quick things, because before I get to my next question, I realize, and I want to bring this to everybody's attention, that you are one of the earliest creators on Asteroid Protocol. Right. It's, I mean, there are clearly some before you, but when it comes to actual full collections, you are probably in the first 10 or 20 to create an actual collection. So you've already touched on some of this as well, because I mean, you gave a huge comprehensive response in your first comments, but I do want to ask, though, if there's anything else in there. I want to ask as well, why inscriptions, and maybe why not NFTs, or somewhere in there, can you speak on physical art as well?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, okay, so it would just be sort of reiterating the sort of points I've already made. So I think, first of all, inscriptions, and specifically on the Asteroid protocol, that there's no sort of code. I don't have the overhead of having to think about, right, how am I going to have to sort of, upload this sort of collection, and sort of do any sort of further work. As a creator, I can just put it on there, and I don't have to worry about sort of having to learn an extra new skill, which is just, as a creator, that's what you want. You don't want things being in your way that frustrate you. As soon as you get that emotion, and I think this is something that a lot of sort of devs probably sort of find difficult to connect with because they're sort of devs and they've been doing coding for so long. What might be simple to them, is like a completely new language to somebody who's not had experience of that before. And so that barrier to entry, as soon as you create frustration, in that emotion of frustration in somebody, that's it. You've lost them. And I think a lot of devs on other platforms, protocols don't really sort of understand that. And I think, again, without wanting to sort of blow sort of Asteroid's trumpet too much, they got that really right. There's no frustration. It's just been a pleasure. So that's the main thing. The other thing, I suppose, sort of is, the idea that inscriptions are sort of permanent as well. They're written onto the blockchain. They're not being sort of, siloed off into some shadowy sort of realm and could be deleted at any point. I like that. That idea that they're sort of immutable and they're there for as long as the platform's sort of there. I think that's really, really cool. Because even if you make a mistake and you upload something, it's like a creative sort of diary. You can see the things that worked and didn't work. Because for the Coder's Law sort of collection, the sort of main project that I'm sort of doing, I sort of launched that first series and I was a little bit, still sort of a novice using some of the tools that I was using, and it wasn't quite right and it wasn't sitting right with me. It's like, the look of it, the feel of it, it's not quite there. And so I thought, rather than put out like a substandard product, I thought, right, okay, I need to rethink this and sort of go back. And even though it's immutable and it that sort of series 1 collection is still going to be on Cosmos, I put it off into the sort of trash or whatever, that sort of address that you can sort of send it to.
Oh,
but
right, yes.
Yeah, the QQQ sort of address. So, but it's still there. But I kind of like that. I like the fact that there's that sort of diary, and if I want to, I can sort of see that sort of, I can see the sort of development, the evolution of the sort of work. So yeah, I think that's another really, really cool thing about sort of inscriptions over sort of NFTs as well. There's sort of immutability, and it really does sort of align with that decentralized sort of ethos. Whereas I think NFTs, again, where are they sort of going when you're putting them on OpenSea? Or, wherever, where are they stored and who's got sort of access to that storage and what happens to it, sort of, it's kind of all a little bit murky. So I think I really like that as well.
Right. Yep. Got it. So let me see. Where can people find out more about Canyonlands and, of course, your creations? Now, of course, I've been sharing your collections on Asteroid Protocol and, of course, X and, of course, YouTube. So if there's anything you want to mention, let us know because I want to know more about the Coder's Law collection. I do know that there are several installments to the collection as well. And, there's music as well. I know you spoke so much about it, but perhaps you can kind of wrap it up and let us know, again, where to find you and perhaps kind of how does Coder's Law work? Because just for the people who are super new and for those of us who aren't new, who are just collecting, we've got Coder's Law, which is like an access code, but then we've also got Series 1 through maybe Series 8 or 9. So could you just give us an idea of what that's about? Thank you.
So I suppose, again, it's sort of an evolution, really. It started off as the sort of QR codes, and I had it in mind, that I wanted to sort of do something with them. But I wasn't sort of too sure what, they were going to open access to something. But at that sort of point, I hadn't really sort of formulated in my mind what it was going to sort of give access to. And then I suppose I started to think about this sort of story, which is what sort of Coder's Law is about. And so Coder's Law, I suppose, essentially it's about this sort of city-state called sort of Waldengrad, and Waldengrad, sort of named after Walden 2, which is a book by B.F. Skinner. And anybody knows sort of B.F. Skinner, he was a sort of very famous sort of behavioral psychologist in the 60s and 70s. And he wrote this sort of utopian fiction based on sort of behaviorism. And it's really, I suppose, a condensed my sort of idea about sort of Coder's Law is sort of this condensed sort of thoughts on everything that sort of happened, sort of around sort of the pandemic and after the pandemic. So there's a lot of sort of stuff about dystopia in there and sort of control and all of those things. So it's got sort of flavors of obviously things like 1984 and A Brave New World and sort of stuff like that. And I wanted it to be sort of very visually sort of strong. And there's also sort of elements that are very now sort of AI running through it as well. So the series, sort of evolved out of this sort of idea. And I thought, okay, if we get sort of eight parts to the sort of series, that would probably be enough to help me sort of develop the sort of ideas that I've sort of got. And so I suppose the access sort of codes, eventually I'll sort of get a roadmap sort of going, because as AI is getting more and more powerful, the tools are getting more powerful. There's definitely going to be a sort of, sort of opportunity to sort of use these characters that I'm sort of developing, the stories that I'm sort of creating within this world, developing them out as sort of sort of videos, whether it's short vignettes or sort of longer sort of form. And, the hope is to have, sort of people contributing to that as well, so, they could sort of take some characters and develop their own sort of videos off of it and things like that. And so I suppose the access codes is, sort of eventually I want to get a website, and the access codes would give you sort of access to sort of parts of the sort of world. So that's the sort of high level sort of ideas that I've got, and I think it's gonna take some time to sort of execute all of that, because at the moment I'm still sort of going through the narrative and the sort of story and working that out. So I'm coming to sort of finish sort of series 2 probably over the next sort of 3 to 4 sort of weeks. So yeah, and I suppose the other sort of collections have all got some kind of relationship to Coder's Law as well. So with Structura, which is sort of like data sort of graphics, art, they make an appearance within Coder's Law. And so does the Canyonlands and sort of Canyonlands 2 collection. Those characters also make they were used as templates for a lot of the characters in Coder's Law. So there's all every collection that I've got, apart from the Music for Inscription sort of collection, they all sort of tie into sort of Coder's Law in some way. So yeah, all I'd like to sort of say to people is that there is an idea, a strong idea about sort of where this is going, and I'm here for the sort of long haul and really want to make something multimedia, really interesting. Like I said, there's a soundtrack that's sort of being worked for it. And the ideas that I've sort of got, I think, are quite interesting. For series 2, I want to do a competition where, sort of people can create their own sort of piece of music for, sort of series 2, to go along with the sort of soundtrack and so there's lots of sort of ideas that I've got. And, I suppose the message is that, it's going to be a significant undertaking for me, but I'm here for the long haul, and I really want to add value to the community, or for the community. Anybody sort of buys in, I think it's sort of like, potentially like IP to sort of some kind of, sort of multimedia sort of universal sort of world, really. So hopefully, that can sort of take off.
Right. Well, there's a lot of good ideas, and I definitely think that what you're creating is definitely something kind of cinematic. It has some vibe of cinema to it. There's no question about it. Since the very first inscriptions I was watching in the Explorer way back, I mean, it's probably like 3 months at this point back, or 4 months.
Yeah.
Just think of how long it's been, right?
I know, it's
So
crazy. It's like 3 months and 4 months, and it's felt like years.
absolutely, right? A lot of us are looking forward to the launch pad, and I definitely have a feeling that you are as well. I think I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure you are.
yeah,
Right.
definitely, man, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. So, look, what I want to do is I want to encourage everybody to join the creators space, the
Yep.
creators Telegram. So, any Asteroids creators out there, guys, join the Telegram. We can do things like this. Of course, arrange times to speak. We can meet other creators. You can drop your ideas directly to the developers. Have more of a clear line of communication with developers and the creators of the platform to get your ideas out, because everybody's contributions help us to navigate when creating projects, creating new tools, and deploying new things for people. So we definitely take all of your feedback, all of my feedback. Everybody's feedback is pretty much equal, because ultimately we want this to be as simple to use as anything that we've got out there on the internet, but also something that does give you a feeling of, a sense of belonging, maybe even a way, like you said it yourself, you kind of feel like you have a relationship with this platform. You may want to
Mm,
check it every day, you know. Yeah, I think that's
yeah.
kind of ultimately the point. So we're, essentially we're sensitive to what people are saying, we're receptive to what people are saying, and we want to hear your feedback. So absolutely, guys, join the Creator Spotlight. Join the creators, Asteroid Creators Telegram, and we can also get you guys on a Creator Spotlight. So in closing, guys, everyone, absolutely check out Asteroid Protocol on YouTube. Check us out on X, of course. Use Asteroid Protocol. Check out some of these cool collections. And thank you so much to our guest today, representing Canyonlands, and of course, Code is Law, and much more to come, I'm sure, in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Justin. This has been brilliant. Great.
You're absolutely welcome. All the best to you, okay? Take it easy, everyone.
Take care, man.